2012 meeting of the Lake Forest Finance Committee. Elizabeth, could you call the roll, please?
Sure. Mayor Cowhey is absent. Chairman Pandaleon is absent. Alderman Novit?
Here.
Alderman Waldeck?
Here.
Alderman Moore?
Here.
Alderman Schoenheider?
Here.
Alderman Tack? Here. Alderman Palmer?
Here.
Alderman Adelman?
Here.
Mr. Chairman, we have a quorum.
Thank you very much. First item for consideration tonight is consideration of the minutes from the Finance Committee meeting held on September 17, 2012. Any additions, changes, or corrections to those minutes? Hearing none, I'll ask for a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, they are approved. Next item, consideration of the FY 2012 Treasurer's Report presented by Elizabeth Hall. Elizabeth?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In accordance with the Illinois State Statute, a treasurer's report is required to be filed with the city clerk, the county clerk, and published in a Lake Forest newspaper within 6 months of the end of each fiscal year. The report is scheduled to be published in the October 25th, 2000 edition of the Lake Forester, and a copy of the treasurer's report has been included in your packet beginning on page 6. It includes both a summary of compensation paid to employees of the city, a vendor summary, as well as a summary statement of condition. Be happy to answer any questions of the committee.
Is the format of who gets paid what all running into like a big long sentence sort of thing? Is that a requirement, or is that the only practical way to do it? Because I know in the past when these get listed in the newspaper, I get some "oh really" comments from people.
It is typically, it's fairly common amongst municipalities, and is primarily just to save space in the newspaper and minimize costs in the publication.
I think it's pretty straightforward. And at this point, would we need a motion for approval or just acceptance?
It is on the council agenda this evening as well.
Correct.
We should recommend to the council to.
Yeah, I move that we recommend approval at the council meeting.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, is recommended. Next item is potential uses of general fund reserves. Again, Elizabeth?
Thank you. As the committee may recall, at the September Finance Committee meeting, we discussed the fiscal year 14 fiscal policy as the beginning to our fiscal year 14 budget discussions. As part of that discussion, the Finance Committee approved a change in the fund balance reserve policy for the general fund from 15% to 25% of revenues, plus accrued sick and vacation leave. Based on the final results of the fiscal year 12 financials, which will be presented next month to the City Council, at April 30th, 2012, the city's general fund reserves exceed this policy by $3.6 million. As a result, staff began looking at potential options for the Finance Committee to consider. Potential uses of that excess fund balance reserves that might provide a good return to the city, recognizing that interest rates are particularly low in the current economic climate. And so the packet provides two particularly attractive options for the Finance Committee's consideration. No particular action is requested from the Finance Committee today. This is mostly for discussion purposes. And so we wanted to present those two options to the committee for consideration tonight. The first involves the city's early retirement incentive liability. At the July Finance Committee meeting, staff presented an updated analysis of the city's early retirement incentive program that had closed in April of 2012. That updated analysis showed that the city's early retirement incentive program would yield an estimated $4.5 million in net savings over the next 10 years. And recognizing that that ERI liability could provide additional savings, if the city afforded itself an opportunity to pay that liability over an accelerated schedule. Therefore, we worked with the Illinois Municipal Retirement Fund to provide the Finance Committee some additional options, which are presented on page 14 of the packet. The early retirement incentive liability currently is scheduled to be paid out over 10 years. And IMRF charges that liability at 7.5% interest over that 10-year period. And so you can see under option 1 on page 14 that that $4.3 million liability is scheduled to be $6.4 million over the scheduled 10-year amortization period. So we worked with IMRF to present some options. So option 2, 3, and 4 present some additional options with an upfront payment, either amortizing a portion or all of that liability up front and reducing or accelerating the payoff period over a shorter amortization period and showing the estimated savings of that accelerated payment. So we showed under option 2 a $1 million payment up front and reducing that 10-year amortization period to 7 years. Option 3 would be a $2 million payment up front with a 5-year amortization period. And then option 4 would be an immediate payoff of the entire $4.3 million liability. I also wanted to mention that School District 67, because they are part of the city's IMRF program because of the charter situation, they are part of our program and did have ERI participants. They represent about 88% of the liability. So it is recommended that they would share in a pro rata situation any payoff because they would also benefit from the interest savings of any accelerated payoff. We've not had discussions with them, but we could certainly sit down and see if they would be interested in participating as well.
Do they have funds?
We don't know. We haven't had that discussion with them, but they would benefit from an early payoff if they had the opportunity to accelerate that payoff.
I think that's a good start. See if they'd be interested and if they have the funds.
Is there any chance that this, I mean, I know this is kind of a silly question to ask in Illinois, but is there any chance that the 7.85 might get reduced because of the hardship that it has on communities or the amount of funding that's required? If we paid off early, would we, no, I can hear people laughing at her already. I would hate to pay it off and then
have the rate drop in half?
Have the rate drop, right, but I don't.
We can ask the question, but
Yeah.
the other thing, the way that it's scheduled, they also schedule the principal payments in the later years.
Of course they do.
So they definitely take the benefit of the interest payouts.
Elizabeth, how long do we have to make a decision? In other words, how long are these numbers good? And is there a window where we can pay this off without penalty, or can we just, if we decide in a year to do this, we can still do it and the numbers are just a little different?
The numbers change every month. The interest accrues every month. And what happens is that every December 31st, there's an actuarial analysis of the ERI liability, and that's factored into the city's IMRF rate for the calendar year 1 year subsequent. So the city's ERI liability at 12/31/12 will impact the city's IMR rate in calendar year 14. So any calendar year payment by December 31st would benefit the city's IMRF rate the calendar year 12 months following that December 31st date.
So it would be prudent, obviously, if we're going to do something, to do it prior to December 31.
But you can make that payoff in any calendar year between now and the 10-year payoff and still benefit from that.
Question. Option 3 appears to save almost $3.6 million in interest over option 1. Is that correct?
You save $1.6 million.
Oh, gosh.
1.6? Oh, sorry, I was looking at the wrong one. Oh, son of a, okay, so 1.6.
Mhm.
Do we only benefit 12% of that 1.6 and District 67 benefits 88% of that?
Flip that, 88%, and the school district would benefit 12%.
I thought you said 88% of the early retirement was District 67.
No, the city's liability is 88%.
Oh,
I heard it the same way, so.
Oh, sorry.
got it.
Do we have the legal authority to advance funds to the district if we want to do this thing and they want to do this thing, but they don't have the money on hand to do it?
We could by intergovernmental agreement, yes.
I will,
It's an
At a
interest.
reasonable interest rate.
7.4%. I will note that the superintendent of School District 67 has arrived. I don't know if he was watching at home and ran over here real quick. I think there's another item on the agenda later on. But as was noted earlier, we will definitely sit down with them because both of us can benefit, but we don't know to what extent this early payoff will have any material effect on their budgeting going forward.
Can I ask just an alternate, and it's just a thought, you know, we're discussing the excess funds, and it seems like a real good idea. It almost seems like we could borrow funds, be it through a bond or other source, at a lower interest rate to pay off this amount also at a cost savings. So, I mean, there's alternate ways to achieve the same goal and to have a savings. It just seems like it's one mode where it's a great idea to attack the Illinois Municipal Retirement Fund in some way, and this would just be one opportunity. I mean, if we thought about maybe issuing a bond, borrowing from a different source to pay off some of this.
Yeah, but your cost of borrowing is going to be higher than what our lost opportunity of yield is on a
Just
surplus
a thought.
reserve.
Yeah.
So
And-
why wouldn't you use your cheapest money to do that?
Yeah, just examining other areas where we could have a source for funds to pay this off, and I'm sure you've examined that. It's a curiosity.
I had a question, Elizabeth. The recommendation is to do option 3, right, which is the kind of the intermediate level payoff. I mean, was that chosen because it gave you kind of a middle-of-the-road alternative where you still had some excess cash, but you made a significant savings by doing the payment?
Correct.
Okay.
I will note for the record, though, that when Elizabeth and I were chatting, clearly, number one, we won't use any of these funds for operating expenses. But we looked at what would be some of our ability to reduce our future operating costs, i.e. paying down these early retirement costs, and also the second item, which is for the IRMA insurance reserve. But also, we did not factor in any determination or any decisions that the council might make regarding other large capital improvement projects. And that's the reason we wanted to get this out now is because next month you'll be talking about capital improvements. And so we wanted to make sure that you had the full picture as you began that conversation.
Okay, I have to ask, I don't understand the estimated savings line because I'm looking at the total footings under each option, and wouldn't the savings be the difference between the total footing?
What you have to do is add the initial upfront payment. So, for example, option 2 is the savings is the $1 million upfront payment plus the $4.4 million in annual payments 1 through 7.
Oh, okay, I see. So the footings are only years 1 through 10, they don't include the upfront
Are
payment?
these adjusted for net present value, or?
No. No, these just take the annual payments. They're not adjusted for net present value.
So at 7.85%, that's a lot. I think we should just look for the biggest win in a net present value form using an acceptable interest discount rate and pick it if we have extra. And it might be reduction of future capital based on net present value calculations or a reduction of a current liability. Either way, something's out there, right? And
Oh, yeah, no, and that's, I think, why we wanted to present these various options to you, that you could sort of think them over the course of the next 30 to 60 days, so that between now and the end of the year, we can make some decisions as to how we want to utilize these funds, along with some other capital decisions and the tax levy ordinance. Right?
But if there's no time factored into some of these savings, that $2 million savings, not having the money for 7 years, like you would in option 2, could disappear.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Any other comments, questions of Elizabeth or Bob? Okay. Let's move on. Item number 5, the 2012 property tax levy.
Did you want to cover the second concept under item 4?
Sure.
Second concept, using fund balance reserves, is the potential for increased risk retention under the liability insurance program. As you know, the city is a member of the Intergovernmental Risk Management Agency and currently has a $25,000 deductible for its property liability and workers' compensation claims. IRMA members have the option to select higher deductibles and receive a significant credit against their annual member contribution in IRMA for assuming the higher level of risk in the higher deductible. In order to look at the potential and look at the city's best options for deductible in 2013, the city engaged IRMA's actuary to look at the city's loss history and determine what the optimum deductible level for the city might be in 2013, based solely on the city's loss history. The actuary's preliminary analysis has indicated that based on the city's loss history since its initial participation in IRMA, a deductible of $100,000 would provide the city its most cost-effective risk management strategy. The analysis indicates that the current level of reserves in the liability insurance fund, which is about $700,000, would likely be sufficient to support an increase in the deductible to $100,000. The city may want to set aside a portion of the general fund reserves, either in the liability insurance fund or just set that aside in the general fund in the event an atypical claim year would be experienced if the city elected to increase its deductible for 2013. So that would be considered the second most optimum option, in that the actuary's analysis is actually indicating that a $100,000 deductible based on the city's loss history would likely yield a savings in the liability insurance fund compared to the current $25,000 deductible.
Can you quantify that?
how much is that savings?
They're projecting, based on the loss history, approximately $48,000 a year.
And that's just for $500,000 set aside?
No, that's just, the
relatively-
$500,000 is just kind of reserves in the event.
Right, but
And
as it relates to the 3.6 million in surplus, it's just allocating $500,000 as an accrued set aside.
Right,
So it doesn't even cost anything unless it costs something.
exactly,
And the 100,000's per incident, per
per
claim?
claim.
So that covers 5 claims.
Mm-hmm. That's what we sort of figured.
Can you do a
Set aside.
spreadsheet on this?
Yes.
Can we kind of show it?
Right, we've received a preliminary report. They're finalizing their own actuarial work for IRMA for the 2013 year. And then once that analysis is done, they'll finalize our individual report, and then we'll have a report finalized for us.
Okay.
Will that show a contingency of worst-case scenario and we blow through the 500,000?
Yeah, they're indicating this is, for their purposes, a 75% actuarial certainty. So with 75% actuarial certainty, that's based on our loss history.
Well, it's like lies, damn lies, and statistics.
Right.
Well, that's why when the actuarial study said that we had sufficient reserves now to basically move up to that next level, we were not completely comfortable with that analysis, and we said, well, let's increase our, if you will, rainy day fund in case we really had a bad year. But I think, again, in looking at this, we were saying by moving from roughly 25,000 to 100,000, we would save almost $50,000 a year in our premiums to IRMA. And we could continue to add more to the reserve if we felt that that was appropriate, or less, depending on how our experience goes.
It seems like a very good idea to analyze this.
And those reserves would, for lack of a better term, be reserved, sitting in whatever fund balance now, accumulating whatever
Nothing.
minuscule amount of interest we're getting, right?
Right.
Unless they were realized as losses.
Right.
Right. And we would, Elizabeth can jump in here, but basically the idea would be we would set this aside because we would be holding the money rather than IRMA holding the money. And that we could, if we had an emergency, we could move those monies back if we needed to. But generally, we would set those aside so that they were there for any insurance claims that we might have in the course of the year.
You're saying if any strategic opportunities presented themselves, we could dip into that?
That's right.
You know,
If the call still so choose.
I know that you don't use GAAP, you use the municipal one, I forgot the acronym for it.
GASB.
What's it called?
GAP is, but yes, GASB instead of
GASB
GASB.
instead of GAAP. So I don't know about GASB, but I know that in GAAP, you don't have to actually have the money to accrue it internally. You just, it's a method for accounting for a potential loss of some sort or gain of some sort, depending on how, whether it's an inventory or a bad debt or something like that. Is it possible just to have this be something the city's aware of in its financial statements and use the whole money, the whole cash amount to actually save that $2 million or 1.6 or, I mean, affect it? It just seems to me that to take such a substantial portion of it to save $48,000 a year when there's a 1.6 to 1.1 to $2.3 million potential saving on a different page. And there might be other things once, of course, the net present value is calculated into this, and the opportunity cost of not having that money in that during that period. It seems a little bit foggy for me right now, not knowing GASB and those sorts of things. But does the money actually have to be set aside if you accrue for it? Do you need to $500,000 in cash sitting in a bank account? You don't in private business. You're just accruing for it. You better be ready for it. You better have borrowing capacity or something.
Right. No, you don't have to have it in cash. You would need it in fund balance, which it may be receivables, it may be, it needs to be in some kind of asset.
Okay.
So, and it could be, in this case, it may not be in the liability insurance fund. It could even stay in the general fund and just be designated for the potential of liability insurance claims.
Because rarely all accruals are impacted to the level they're accrued.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, we want to be conservative in our accounting, but nevertheless,
Right,
that money might save us a lot of money elsewhere,
right,
which is also conservative.
Right.
So
right.
anyway, that's,
So Elizabeth, you're going to do a bit of more detailed analysis for us, just to take a look?
Yes.
You know, that's not a bad internal rate of return. If you're marking at $500,000 and saving 48 a year, that's like 10% yield.
It's 9 and something.
Yeah,
Except
it's not bad.
if you lose your 500,000, it does change the formula.
I know. I can envision.
That's right.
It's like a Greek bond.
I like saving $2 million on 3.6. The alternative.
Any other questions or comments on that? Okay. Now we will move on to the 2012 property tax levy. Elizabeth?
We just wanted to raise this for discussion with the Finance Committee. It's a little bit early for the discussion. However, the anticipated expiration of the city's tax increment financing district this year will impact the 2012 property tax levy. The first year a TIF expires, the TIF increment is added to the equalized assessed valuation in the same manner as new construction. It gives taxing districts the opportunity to add that to the aggregate extension base in proportion to the TIF increment in the year the TIF is dissolved. So it's just a 1-year option that can come back in as new construction outside of the property tax cap. Therefore, in order to comply with the truth in taxation statute, which does not recognize the dissolution of a TIF and exempt that from truth in taxation, this requires a black box notice in the newspaper and public hearing if the resulting tax levy will exceed 105% of the tax levy extended in the prior year. And that is typically the case when a TIF expires. The truth in taxation statute requires that the corporate authorities of the taxing district estimate the amount of a proposed aggregate tax levy not less than 20 days before the adoption of the tax levy ordinance. The city typically does that as part of its budget process, and that is the mechanism used to determine whether or not a notice in public hearing is required under truth in taxation. However, because of the TIF expiration this year, we are recommending that in order to enhance transparency in this year's tax levy process, that we actually formalize that estimate process as part of the November 5th City Council meeting and add that as an additional step to the tax levy process, at which time the public hearing date could be established. So we've provided in the packet the proposed tax levy process to be as follows. November 5th, at the City Council meeting, the 2012 tax levy estimate would be provided to the City Council, and we would establish the tax levy public hearing date. On November 19th, which would be the typical date, would be the first reading of the 2012 tax levy ordinance. November 22nd would be the notice of the public hearing in the Lake Forester, and then December 3rd would be the public hearing and the second reading of the tax levy ordinance. So we just wanted to bring that recommendation and discussion to the Finance Committee for your discussion and concurrence.
Any questions or comments regarding that?
I think transparency is laudable.
I guess not. That sounds good.
Okay.
Moving on to other business, item 6. Elizabeth has included in the committee report the September 2012 flash report and the debt capacity chart. Elizabeth, any comments on that?
No, the flash report starts on page 15. So we've again got the new front summary report showing the comparisons of the revenues and expenses by fund. Page 16 provides the comparison of the revenues. Again, for the most part, positive variances continue to trend in most revenues, other than real estate transfer tax, which continues to fall short of budget. And we provided that detail on 17 and 18 and 19. So unless there's any questions, specific questions about the flash report.
Any questions on the flash report? Or on the debt capacity?
I don't understand the debt capacity graph.
Page 20, this was just a chart that we updated as a result of the refunding. Last year changed a lot of the debt service schedules, so I've gone through and updated all of that to reflect the new debt service requirements, and wanted to provide an updated schedule. The blue chart at the top, the blue line at the top is just the debt service levy in 2004 when the city went home rule. And then the pink line is the currently extended debt. Now, this only includes the debt service that is paid from the debt service property tax levy. So it does not include debt that is paid from other revenue sources and abated when the property tax levy is approved later this year. So this is only levied debt service.
Does this assume that we're not going to rebond for any reason?
No, this was just to provide the Finance Committee an updated analysis of what the capacity is. I think this was done most recently in 2009 or 2010. And so we just wanted to provide an updated analysis given current bond market conditions and the impacts of the refunding in 2011. And show, based on current bond market conditions and current debt service requirements, how much would the capacity that exists today for the difference between the debt service that is currently extended compared to really the debt service cap that exists for levy debt, how much debt that would buy through to 2039. And so we worked with Spear Financial, and given the capacity that exists through 2039 and bond market conditions today, $24 million today could be issued, and that would fill to the blue line through 2039. And this 5-year CIP last year in the budget for fiscal year 13 to 17 projected $4.7 million in bond issuance, so that left a net of $19.3 million.
Alderman, again, I think this was just, we want to give you some information prior to going into the capital improvement discussion, so you had an understanding of what that capacity is.
Okay. The
It's
two
rather
parts on the right are perfectly clear. But the graphs, I can't, I don't know whether to turn them on their angle or, I'll just worry about it later. I apologize.
Yeah. No,
I
what
just don't know how to read
happens
the
is,
graph.
as the different debt comes offline, that's what you see, sort of that step down. And what we've done in the past is, many times we will issue debt that then fills in those gaps, if you will. So some debt's coming offline, some's coming offline, others comes online.
The note that it says assumes fiscal year 16 MS bonds paid from sale of former MS site. When would that occur?
3 more years.
3 more years?
Yeah.
At the end of 3 more years.
Right, actually Elizabeth and I had a conversation about that late this afternoon as well, and one of the things I asked her to do was assume that we didn't sell the property at all and we had to assume that debt. What would that look like in terms of this capacity? So we'll have that for you at next meeting, maybe? Yeah. That'd be a worst case scenario.
We wouldn't want to rest on our laurels.
It's getting painful.
Yeah, that's right. The minutes will so reflect.
Any other questions for Elizabeth on the flash report of the debt capacity chart? Next item for the Finance Committee agenda is the opportunity for the public to address the Finance Committee. Any particular items anyone in the public want to address the Finance Committee on? Seeing none. Elizabeth, I know you and I spoke briefly this afternoon about the possibility, if we had a couple of minutes, of having Joe come up and fill us in a bit and talk about the new Dropbox scenario. Should we try to knock that out if we can?
No, absolutely. And while he's coming up, the council had asked that we move up the time in which you get your packets, and this past meeting was actually our soft opening. We wanted to sort of see how it went. We will make sure that we do so going forward. The real question is, what is the best day for you to receive them? I know that it used to be Friday afternoon, which was very late for some of the aldermen. That's why we tried to move it up to Wednesday afternoon. I don't know if you like that, you don't like that. I would suggest it's somewhere between Wednesday and Thursday, but really it's whatever the pleasure of the council is as we go forward. And then also, you might remember, it was about 2 months ago, we tried sending out a packet that had a lot of information in it, and it was so large that unfortunately we couldn't push it to your iPads. And so what Joe is going to be sharing with you is a technology that we can dump this or any other large document into a file, and you, using your iPad, is going to be able to go in and retrieve it and pull it out, and we shouldn't have the same technological problems that we had when we tried to send you out files from City Hall.
Members of the Finance Committee, my name is Joe Gravansky. I'm the Assistant Director, IT Division. About setup, we have had some challenges in the past with the delivery mechanism of the agenda. As we're starting to see the agendas get larger and larger, we look for a solution. We did look at a couple different ways to do it. The simple web-based method, transfer process called FTP. Some people may be somewhat used to that. And other different methods as well. Our biggest thing that we wanted to do is we wanted to make it as simple as possible and also make it a secure method, a secure delivery process as possible as well. As we looked through all those, the easiest one that we came up with was the cloud-based methods out there. We did evaluate a couple different cloud-based methods, and we also interviewed a couple municipalities. I know Frankfurt was one of them that are currently using the same type of tablets we're using here, and they were using Dropbox as well. We interviewed a couple different places, and Dropbox did seem to be the best and most, that did give us the most bang for our buck. So what I'd like to do is offer a bit of a presentation and then go over a bit of the setup. I did give you setup directions. I know it's ironic on paper, but since the new agenda delivery method isn't in place yet, here we do it that way. As you see above on the screen, we do have the image of an iPad similar to the ones that you have in front of you. Dropbox, if configured correctly, does fully integrate with the city's recommended PDF annotation software, the PDF Expert, and it makes the delivery process extremely quick. I'm going to move quickly over to a laptop. The laptop it sort of simulates. Just give a second when it transfers over. The laptop will simulate what the staff process is, and it's actually fairly simple. I have, for example, this committee, this agenda packet for City Council for this evening. We're going to do a transfer over as well. Start the process now. And it's going, and actually it looks like it has transferred over already. The way that we're asking or recommending that you do it is go through the recommended annotation software, but that does not preclude us from just using that software. With using Dropbox, you can go on the web-based interface that they have on any computer, get the same information as well. You can use the Dropbox application, although that's not necessary either. If we move into PDF Expert, notice that there is a folder already set up, and it is synchronized. You'll see little icons in the corner. As you can see, I'll have a test Alderman account here. The City Council agenda is already here in place. This month's agenda was just under 4 megabytes, something along 3 megabytes, so it was fairly small. But the one that we had a considerable problem with was just over 28 megabytes at the time. We have stress tested this to over 50 megabytes without issue. Now, granted, it's not going to be as quickly as the process that I just showed you, but I didn't want to take 50 megabytes of your time. Are there any questions? And of course, we're going to ask that you know, the instructions are set up or given to you, but staff will be available for any assistance necessary.
That's what I was looking for, Joe.
Absolutely.
So do we have this recommended software for PDF software already loaded on it?
You should, yes. If the software is already on there, then it's just a reconfiguration change. The next step actually is staff will send out the email inviting you to the Dropbox team, of all of which we will now be a member of. You'll put in a secured password that's yours and yours only. And then the synchronization process between the application and the Dropbox cloud-based utility will occur.
And Joe, do you want them to do that before they set up a time to come in with you and configure it?
If you'd like to start the process, by all means. Some people may be familiar with the Dropbox process. Ideally, that would be great, but if that's not something that's easily done, then by all means, we'd be more than happy to walk everyone through it.
Where would we know if we have PDF expert on our? How would we find it on our? I don't
If
know
it
what
was,
to put
if it's, yeah.
I think I have it, I just,
You had to buy it.
You can use a search function.
okay, it's not, I don't have that icon.
Yeah, you'd have it. You'd have to put it on there. You'd have this.
I don't have that.
Yeah, and then you put all your,
So I have to
can
get
set
that
that
on my
up as well.
computer. And then it would make more sense, okay.
All right, okay. I don't know, we'll get a couple minutes quickly. Bob, just personal opinion, I think, as you said, kind of middle of the road from a date standpoint. End of the day, Friday always, I think, feels late. I think Wednesday feels early to me. And I think there's still a lot of things going on Wednesday afternoon, Wednesday evening. Like, maybe end of the day, Thursday might be a good target. Just personal opinion.
That's because you play paddle on Wednesdays.
That's a good point.
The earlier the better, I
yeah.
think. 'Cause you never, we all have different schedules, and the more opportunity we have to find time to read that.
Yeah, I'd like it on Wednesday.
Yeah, realistically, if we had it on Thursdays, that'd be great. Earlier is better, as said, but that extra day gives us an opportunity in case there's weekend obligations.
And I would say the bigger the agenda, the more issues that we have, the nicer it is to get it sooner, and it's probably harder to get it to us sooner when that happens.
But I think some of it will, and what we've talked about at a staff level is because the packets are getting larger, that technically we have to only have the final, if you will, Friday afternoon. But I would say 99 out of 100 times, whatever we send you Wednesday is going to be the final packet, except maybe occasionally, we're waiting on the city attorney for something, but
That'll slow the process.
but we can send that out under separate email. But we can try Wednesday for a while, and if we start to have a problem, we can come back to you and say, could we push it to Thursday? But what I'm hearing is the earlier the better. And then if something changes between Wednesday and Friday, we will certainly alert you to that.
Okay. Great. Okay, final item. I need a motion for adjournment of the Finance Committee.
So moved.
Second?
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. City Council will begin in 5 minutes.
Yeah, that's an easy one. Yeah.